So Code Vein is coming out next month, and I thought I would share some of my thoughts about the game since a while ago I had the chance to play the network test for Code Vein on PS4. I only had the time to play the game for 3 hours and only played the game on single player mode. This network test version of the game also shouldn't be assumed to necessarily accurately reflect the final product. So when I criticize it and share my thoughts about my time with the game, keep in mind that these opinions are only about the network test on PlayStation 4 version of the game. The final product might be a lot more polished on some areas. But here are my quick thoughts about the Code Vein network test. The game opens up with a fantastic character creation screen that has very satisfying amount of different options to make the silent main character your own. For example, there are multiple voice options, hairstyles, body types and all kinds of weird accessories that you can attach to your character that are fully color customizable as well. This is probably the deepest character creation that I have ever seen, and you can dive into ridiculous amount of detail when fine-tuning your look, such as deciding the way how the light shining on your eyeballs looks like. The only problem I had with the character creation is that it's quite hard not to make your character look like some sort of a sex god. All of the base costume options available were super revealing, and if this is a huge problem for you, you might find some relief in the fact that the wearable armor in the game will cover up your body in-game. Except for the time you spend in the hub area where you are forced to run around with your boobs hanging out no matter what. So yeah, Code Vein is very anime. You can customize your character at any time at the hub area later on if you're not happy with your look, which is always a nice option to have.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the character creation is where most of the positives ended for me. In the short tutorial section you learn that there are 3 classes in the game: Fighter, Caster and Ranger. I spent my time in the network test playing as a Ranger that had the best mobility of the 3 and could do ranged attacks. The gameplay is very similar to From Software's Souls games. You have fast light attacks and slower but more powerful heavy attacks. You can block and perform parries, and that when timed correctly will result to a strong special attack, with its own cool but ultimately tiring cinematic that I think could be turned off in the settings if you get bored with it. Like in Souls games, there's no jump button, but you can dodge to avoid attacks. You also learn gifts that can be set as special powers for your character that come in passive and active categories. Passive gifts are buffs like faster stamina regeneration, but active gifts are, for example, special attacks like magic missiles or healing that have cooldown times after use. It's very obvious that Code Vein tries to reach the Souls fanbase, but from what I've seen so far, pretty much everything is done worse if we do compare it to Souls games. When I think about anime action game like this, I would expect a fast-paced, responsive and flashy title. But in Code Vein, it seemed like they wanted to make the game slow to achieve that heavy feel of Souls combat without really understanding what made it good in the first place. I somehow feel that there's a great dissonance between the art style and the game feel in this game, and I constantly found myself thinking, that should be faster, that should be cooler and so on. Looking at the high-paced anime action trailers of this game gives me very different vibe than what the game actually feels like when playing. Combat and attack animations feel very stiff, but somehow the hits you deal to the enemies lack any sort of impact as well. Especially guns felt like spraying your enemy with a water pistol. One of the reasons why the arguably simple combat system of Souls games works so well is the great animation work of the attacks, and everything down to the sound effects supported the heavy feel of blows on your opponent or the player character. Also, something Souls games did well to complement the combat system was the great variety of weapons with unique movesets. Now, I cannot remember this for sure, so take it with a grain of salt, but I think there were only few movesets available in Code Vein for a couple of different weapon classes. If you were expecting that they would try to go for incredible level or monster designs to follow up Souls games, I'm sorry to inform you that at least in the network test those were also very underwhelming so far. Some shortcuts for faster backtracking were there, but the levels themselves were very dull and unoriginal except for maybe the hub area. The performance of the network test on PS4 was absolutely horrible. The game dropped frames like crazy when basically anything was happening. You attacked an enemy, frames dropped. You moved to a new area, frames dropped. You cast a spell, frames dropped. I don't see this being an issue with the PC version of the game, but if this bad performance stays in the final product, I feel very sorry for the console people. The weirdest thing is that the game doesn't look like it should be stressing PS4 this much. Some of the lighting looks pretty, but nothing that spectacular happens on the screen that should make my PS4 scream in pain constantly. The companions you can summon in the game suffer from something I like to call the Dragon's Dogma syndrome, meaning that they always have something stupid to say and it gets really annoying really fast. Luckily, I think you could turn this chatter off in the settings as well. The story and dialogue so far, without going too much into detail, was just some generic nonsense about our character being special somehow and destined to perhaps save the world or something. I honestly lost interest very fast in what was going on in the story. So in summary, judging from the network test alone, Code Vein was pretty disappointing so far, even when my expectations weren't too high to begin with. I can only recommend it to someone who really likes the anime aesthetic and Soul-style combat and doesn't just want to play Souls games instead. So far, literally the best thing about Code Vein was huge ass anime titties, and that is enough for some people out there. I still might end up buying the game regardless to see if it plays better on PC and if the game has improved at all from the network test version. Thank you so much for watching, and take care.